When you have people who've spent their time and treasure on that event and they're sitting there tuned out and scrolling or answering their emails, you're not making it worth their while.
You just heard from Devon Montgomery Pasha. She is the Chief Experience Officer at DMP Creative. When it comes to creating unforgettable experiences with live events, listen, she is the queen of all of that.
Why would you waste any moment of that audience's attention or make them tune out? Because the hardest thing to do is to get them back.
Live events have never been hotter, but the predictable formula for programming requires a fresh approach.
You need to really think about the value of intentionally designed events that really capture the attention and emotions of your audience.
Tune in now as Devon walks us through her approach to capturing the attention of attendees in an age dominated by smartphones. People get confused, I think, about the role of the MC. And a lot of times I've seen this a lot. It's the chair of the board or it's someone that's pulled from like leadership. It's like, oh, let Frank do it. Oh, let so-and-so do it.
Yeah, my avatar for that is Bob from accounting.
Yeah, Bob from accounting.
And it's not it's not that that's a specific person, but it's like, oh, like he used to be a radio DJ, or he's really funny and he's always great at the company picnic. So it's Bob from accounting.
Right.
And to sort of answer the question that was there, first of all, there's also a dozen different types of MCs. Like we're not all created equal. And that's a good thing to understand, because you have some MCs who are great at social events. You have some MCs who are more powerful moderators in a protocol type setting to interview your great leaders. You have energetic MCs or corporate MCs, which is a little bit more my style and function. Although I have a bit of a differentiation, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, but we're not all created equal. And it's more what we're not, which is also we're not actors.
Yes.
So some of us have acting or speaking or improv backgrounds, which is a tool I find super helpful as a tool to continue to train in the craft. But we're not actors who are just up there to read your screen.
Yeah.
Like you can hire people to do that, but that's not what we are. And that's why when we think about Bob from accounting, like you wouldn't want your MC to go in and do your business accounting. So why would you want your business accountant or your CEO or your C-suite or your VP to come in and guide your audience through their experience journey? Right. That's why you need an MC. And that's where we specialize. A good friend of mine said that the MC is the, the elected official of your audience.
I absolutely love that. I mean, I think that, it's a good way to sort of visualize the role that the MC can play. But, when you begin to talk with people maybe somebody's reached out and they say, Devon, we're interested in having you come and MC. How do you begin to work with them so that you can manage expectations, do a little bit of education on that front end of it? Because I don't think that a lot of association executives are necessarily that well in tune with what is happening as far as what MCs can offer and the role the important role that an MC can play in some of the
Absolutely
building those events.
And in terms of education, I think what maybe differentiates me from some of my colleagues is that I do have an event design and event strategy background.
Right.
So I speak your event. I speak the language and the shorthand, and I've been there and I've done it and I've seen it all and I've heard all of the excuses. And when I boil it down, especially for association executives, because I come from an association alumni, a traditional older background, we're the first person that your audience hears from. So the last person that you think to put up on that stage. And better yet, if you're thinking about that C-suite or that Bob from accounting, the people who know of that person have a preconceived notion or emotional connection to that person and are already judging or in a certain state by the time they take the stage.
Yeah.
To also think about it, if you think about a great relay race, there's always handoffs and transitions that have to happen. So even if your CEO is going to speak, why not set the stage for that person in a way that prepares your audience for the connection they're about to have with your CEO versus starting with them? And a lot of times, even if they're good speakers, they're not professionals. So when you think of all the things that go wrong during stage programs, if you don't have a professional up there whose role it is to ensure seamless transitions, to ensure
Mm.
covers from hiccups or issues, to knows what to do when the tech goes down, who knows what to do when the timers go off, who knows what to do when your keynote speaker has gone 15 minutes over budgeted time.
Right.
Now, these are
Right.
the important aspects of having a professional join your team.
Yeah.
As an event strategist, my job is then to spend all the time before I get on stage. That's the value, right? That's where I look at in some of the pricing models when we're talking dollars and cents is what the value is all the time we spend together before I hit that stage. I want to be so seamlessly integrated into the intentional design of that event that people think I've worked with you for years.
Right. Right. And that's the part where I really admire the work of professionals like yourself who um, put that energy on the front end. There, you have tons of questions that you ask. You want to understand the ins and outs of all of it so that you can build toward that engagement and that success. And I think that there is a misconception, and maybe it's because of some of these experiences with bringing Bob from accounting up, uh,
Mhm.
where they're just introducing the speakers, or they're just all you have to do is read from the slides, Bob, and then the rest of it's going to come into play, and that's not good enough anymore. I don't think
It's
that
not.
I don't know if it ever was, but I think now it really is hurting a lot of organizations that maybe relied on that in the past. Can you tell us more about your own experience? Have you observed the same?
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. I was at an event recently where I was joining as a professional. So I was sitting in the back for their stage program where they had their Bob from accounting. And Bob from accounting came up and everyone got their phones out. And I took pictures. I said, everyone in that room has their phone out right now. And Bob from accounting read from a script and he had his notes and he was looking at the prompter and engagement and thank you so much for being here. And I'm like, dude, seriously? No one is paying
No.
attention. And
Right.
in an economy where attention is the number one economy out there right now, it's the number one resource. It's what everyone wants, right?
Yeah.
So coveted. Why would you waste any moment of that audience's attention or make them tune out? Because the hardest thing to do is to get them back.
Right. Right.
So when you look at doing more with less, which we're all doing more of, especially your association market, you're really looking at when you have people who've spent their time and treasure on that event and they're sitting there tuned out and scrolling or answering their emails, you're not making it worth their while. And they're going to
Right.
think long and hard about what did I learn? What did I get
Yeah.
out of that? Is it worth me going back? Why am I a member of this association? Is
Mm.
it worth me staying? And that's where you need to really think about the value of intentionally designed events and intentionally designed stage programs that really capture the attention and emotions of your audience in order to drive them to a desired effect.
You've developed something, the Spark framework.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that because in an effort to try to, figure out what's the best approach, what's the best path we can take. Tell us a little bit about this, about Spark and what is it? What goes into what went into it?
Absolutely. So Spark was I was trying to figure out a quick way to convey to potential clients, associations, colleagues about what I do.
Yeah.
And it sort of joined from red lipstick, and it is the fault of red lipstick. And
I love
I
red
will
lipstick, so
that was our
yeah.
favorite thing. Um, but when I did a brand survey years ago, one of the questions was, "What color do you associate with me?" And I thought I was a blue, purple, loving, la da da kind of flowy. And everyone's like, "No, you're red. You're fire. You're passionate and powerful." And so red became the brand color. And I was trying to figure out an acronym that would allow me to share some of my strategy methods on creating and sparking or igniting great engagement. And thank you to generative AI and ChatGPT, and I played around with them, and that's where Spark came from. And I like Spark because for me, it takes the best parts of event design and my own methods on thinking through emotional engagement, my work with creativity and innovation. So it talks about, if you think about the word Spark, so it's structure, purpose, audience, relevance, and kinetics. And so
Mm.
it's Spark. And really what that is different ways to think through intentional design in order to spark and maintain audience engagement.
Hmm. I thanks for explaining that, because I have been fascinated to find out a little bit more about the spark. I had to understand it a little bit better, and I think, okay, I can see how to maybe begin applying this a little bit. I want to make sure that while we were talking about this topic today about MCs and sort of saving the struggling association events that are out there,
Mhm.
one of the questions that people ask, it has to do with an investment. How do I measure whether something, the success of bringing in an MC and working with an MC, how can I argue for making an investment in an MC? What should I expect to invest? All of these questions, trying to figure out, what should I expect to get out of it? How do I know if I've gotten out of it what I should? And, how do I begin to sort of argue to allocate for something like this?
I realize that we're all doing more with less. And, I used to say the same thing about working with event designers is that it's going to take more time, it's going to cost more money. And it sounds like you can't afford not to,
Mhm.
because by not investing in the engagement pieces, you're still not going to get your desired behavior. So there's actually a lot of statistics out there from a Brain Date and Limelight. Julia Solaris at Bold Push talk about the value of engagement. Storycraft Labs does a lot of work with belonging and the value, the actual numeric calculated value of when people feel like that sense of belonging, they turn into better customers, repeat customers, brand advocates. So investing in someone whose job it is to drive towards the organization's goals, to understand the audience's goals, and to create a seamless stage program that adheres and steers towards those goals is what creates powerful engagement, emotional moments, and connectivity. Through that, you're going to see higher engagement scores and
Mhm.
satisfaction scores. You're going to see repeat attendance rates. You're going to see higher NPS scores. You're going to see higher sponsor satisfaction. If
Oh,
someone's job is up there to acknowledge and celebrate sponsorship in a
yeah.
very public way, but that creates connection. Not like, this is sponsored by Kellogg's. It's like, okay, but it's like, wow, I really want to thank this brand for allowing that person to come up here. How lucky are we that we have that opportunity to hear from these great speakers? What a wonderful way to invest their funds. Let's really give them another round of applause. Thank you so much for that. And you're like, oh, so people feel acknowledged
Yeah.
instead of just putting their logo up there, to being able to call that out. And for associations, it's about membership. It's about acknowledging the members in the room or the non-members who you'd like to convert with call to action to think about joining associations, which I think now, if you look at the state of associations, the average age is getting older and older. And when
Mm.
you're looking at associations that have average ages in the 60s plus, there was one statistic I heard recently where the average age was 80.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And you're
I don't
like,
even know what to say about that.
I'm literally, I'm like, I had to take a minute. I was like, the average age is 80. I'm like trying to go back to rudimentary math. I'm like, that there's something wrong with that. And it's because we're not capturing or acknowledging the value of membership in a way that is driving membership from a younger audience, because they do expect their attention to be captured. And
Mhm.
if you don't, there's no value.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to speak to the value question too, because right now I think a lot of organizations where associations are asking themselves a lot of questions as it pertains to events. And I know you've seen a lot of the same chatter back and forth in the event professionals world and in the associations atmosphere,
Mhm.
where we're all trying to figure out what impact is what's happening in the United States at the federal level going to have on things like international attendance to some of the meetings that we have? What kind of impact are these tariffs going to end up, or
Mhm.
what's happening with potential taxation of the nonprofit industry,
Yeah.
or add the question about grants that may not be getting funded. There's a lot of uncertainty. It reminds us a lot of the COVID times,
Yeah.
but the way that this plays out with regards to associations having events is it's like, okay, first of all, if we go ahead and have our event and we end up with the people who are there that have all kinds of differing opinions about such things, how do we work with our MC to navigate bringing people together when I don't know if I can keep people together around my household dinner table, much less this
Yeah.
entire organization coming to this meeting. And I'm curious from your perspective, like what works, what doesn't work? How can you help bring people together?
Well, an MC's job is to set the tone, and a great MC understand that landscape that you just drew
Yeah.
from the get go. I was actually at an association event. I was emceeing last week, and they got the tariff news during the event. And these are people who sell goods, and their primary role is to sell goods. And you could see the leaders just panicking over their phones, just and some people knew what that meant. Some people didn't. People were starting to panic. People were wondering what to do. Should they leave the event? And the leaders were able to, I said, but how can I be helpful in this moment, knowing that this is about commanding attention? And they said, could you help us get everyone's attention and make an address? We're trying to do X, Y, and Z. Like, absolutely. Managed to find a microphone, asked text him, was like, I need a very quick setup. I need to amplify. I need to do it in this room, and I need to make an announcement. And was able to project, ladies and gentlemen, the leaders would like to gather your attention for a moment. As some of you may be aware, this has just gone live. It is causing a lot of connection, and we're going to do XYZ thing. And I was able to help shape, to acknowledge that real things are happening. You don't want to sweep things under the rug. um, Brene Brown said recently that, like, what you talk about in the meeting is what you allow in the meeting. So if we'd said nothing and everyone's silently panicking about this, then that's not allowed to be talked about. You create this dissonance, like, that you can
Yeah.
just feel in the energy. A good MC is going to set this tone for respect and openness. A good MC is going to say what's allowed in the meeting. It's going to give people permission to be themselves, to have polite discourse. Like, absolutely, we're going to have open discourse about this. We're going to encourage you to share in respectful ways. We're not going to name call. We're not going to be, discouraging. We're not going to be combative, but we're going to have an open dialogue. And that's how we're setting the permission and ground rules for different discourse. But again, it's always about steering the energy, attention, and focus towards the goal. And if
Yeah.
that discourse is not part of the event's discourse, then it's how do you acknowledge that that is happening, and you get people to understand the ground rules and why they're there, and remind them why they're there, and keep the attention focused on where it needs to be versus letting it get pulled in one direction or another. And again, having a great MC who's party neutral, in terms of, like, I'm not paid to be there to have an opinion one way or the other. I might have a personal opinion, and that's for me to share. But if I'm the elected official of the audience and I'm there in a professional capacity, again, my job is to be as neutral as possible and to steer conversation, attention, and focus towards that desired outcome, towards whatever the goal was that was initially set. And that's what a professional is there to do.
And yeah, that's the difference between God bless you, Bob from
Mhm.
accounting, but like when it comes to conversations like this, and I think we'll have more and more of them. I mean, right now, even if you didn't have the some of the challenging conversations that are coming as a result of a lot of change that's
Mm.
happening at that legislative level. especially in the United States, but elsewhere throughout the world too. It's like, I think that you also have to understand that we are also dealing with the climate crisis. We have all of,
All these things that are going to steal our attention and focus and energy and emotions. Absolutely.
and so somebody to help keep things relevant, but also, here are our guardrails. Here are the rules of the road for how we're going to converse with each other and how we're going to keep things moving it with a positive direction so that we are
Yeah.
getting meaning from that, right?
Especially in our general sessions and our stage program sessions where we are open, there is a directive. We are
Yeah.
directing our attention here. We are directing our focus. We are 100% acknowledging that things are happening. We're acknowledging that this is going to cause discussion in your hallway conversations, in your bar conversations, or dinner conversations later this evening. Absolutely, we welcome discourse and we encourage you to share your feelings or thoughts on these things, but in our general sessions and while we're gathered together officially, this is how the event is going to go. But essentially, what you do on your own time is what you do on your own time. And the organization may need some sort of sharing that the organization itself does not take sides. We do not say that one, we're not politically affiliated. And oftentimes that's something the MC also needs to share or be well versed in certain legal jargon. If there are arrangements made with certain sponsors or speakers where things have to be said specifically to adhere to contracts,
Mhm.
professional MC. If there, God forbid, if there are problems, for example, if your speaker goes on a rant about one of those charged topics and decides to go way off script and is just belligerently ranting at your audience about something, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? And I've heard about this happening. That is not, and
Those are real stories.
yeah, yeah. I've been hearing about this, and I have to say, I mean, anyone who's ever, if you've ever tried to MC, if you've ever gone, and we're talking with Devon, who's a professional. I have to tell you, that's one of the hardest jobs that is out there. Trying to do a good job and understand all of the moving pieces behind the scenes, understand how to make other people feel comfortable, being diplomatic when you're working live on the spot, when you're interacting with an audience, dealing with emotionally charged situations. And you've also got like all of the behind the scenes sort of drama that's always unfolding at any sort of event that it's
Adaptability,
really
yeah.
amazing.
It's our
Yeah.
number one skill. And
Yeah.
and for me, it's empathy. I'm a massively empathetic person, which I think plays out well on stage because you can kind of sense if the audience is really disengaging, if they're creating a lot of discomfort. If you're trying something that doesn't resonate with that audience, you have to know on the fly how to, to refigure in order to keep them in the sphere that you've sort of agreed is where you'd like to keep them. And it's understanding like if this needs to be a somber moment, then you need to reflect that appropriately. If you need to dial the energy up, then you have to have all the tricks in your trade to dial the energy up. If the mics go out, you have to be ready to project. I was a professional singer at some point, so I still keep the muscle moving and do diaphragmatic breathing and make sure that when it's time to project that the voice is able to carry in a certain way. If you can't command that audience back, then it's something that you're going to lose. You need to be able to talk with your risk team to understand in case of an emergency. What are the emergency procedures? Because you may
Yeah.
be the one called upon to express those emergency procedures, and you have to stay calm and project and make sure that you are clearly communicating what needs to happen next. And again, all of this can rely or be relied on with a professional. And if you're going to hire a professional, make sure you're going over that plan with them. What are you going to do in case of emergency? A good MC will ask if something happens, do you go to a PR person who's drafting that specific text? Is this something that you would expect me to do? Who's doing the scripting? Who can I check with to ensure if there's legal requirements for scripting that I have the exact script in front of me at all
Yeah.
times? It's things like that. And again, you'll be surprised how much value can be invested, even in hybrid models where a professional MC can still find that connectivity.
Question I wanted to hit on before we leave is for an association leader planning their next major event, what one stage program element would create the biggest immediate impact on audience experience?
I think anything that sparks joy. And that would have to be designed, whether that's coming from your MC and an initial sort of, I call them like energizers, to get the crowd in the right space, whether it's someone who's talking to a topic that is inspirational. Joy is not the feel good bonus anymore. Joy is how we need to measure our success and needs to be part of the intentional design of the event. I actually just finished reading a book and I wanted to have it here because to me this is something that I'm reading and rereading. Oh my God, you have it here. Stop at the front door.
I have it.
So real quick, education is a big part of how, as event professionals, as association professionals, and understanding the human experience, because when you bring people together, you have to understand the human experience. And I wanted to talk about finding catalysts for happiness, productivity, and joy, because when you're when you're intentionally designing stage programs, in those moments where you have everyone together in one space, you have to be thinking about the intentional moments, the intentional experience journey touch points that you have, and how to use each of those touch points towards a desired goal. And that's how you create a captivating program where people go from spectators to invested stakeholders, how you have that epic impact on them, and really thinking through and working with a strategist or a designer or your MC whose job is to create those moments on stage. Because if you can spark joy, if you can spark awe, if you can spark positive emotional connections from the beginning, you're creating a trust and sort of building that pipeline, that lifeline, like tying that thread to the organizations. Like, wow, I love this moment. I sparked joy. I have some dopamine, some oxytocin. I want more. Oh, you need me to join the organization to have more? I'm going to think about that.
Yeah.
Or when your funding officers come back and talk to them after the event about making donations, it's like, wow, I sparked so much joy. I have positive associations now. And yeah, I will love to talk to you about a donation. I would like to talk to you about membership, because you've sparked this sense of belonging and joy and creating and intentionally designing experiences that drive towards that desired end goal.
Well, I have to say, I thank you so much for joining me today. I cannot believe the time. It's 30 minutes have gone by like
Wow.
that. But I have to say, you are coming back. I am
We'll
going
do a part two.
we'll chase you down for part two. Thank you so much, Devin, for all the
Oh,
good work that you do. And I look forward to our next conversation.